Welcome to the RotoWire Sports Gambling Podcast, sponsored, as always, by BetMGM. Nick Whalen here with my trusty comrade, John McKechnie. We're going to be talking Week 6 of the NFL season. We'll do a little Week 5 recap. I'll be licking my wounds a little bit, John. I had a rough week against the spread. The straight-up picks went okay, but that's chump change as far as what we're concerned here. But first of all, I will acknowledge, yes, I am in a hotel. I'm in a different time zone. I'm out in the mountain time right now in Colorado. Just got back from a nice little morning trip out to Boulder. I know you've been there as well. I'll tell you what, man, as guys, we both went to big state schools. You went to Georgia. I went to Wisconsin. UC Boulder is on the short list of places where, look, I would if I could do it over again, I would always go to Wisconsin. But man, what a campus they have.
Yeah, unreal. That setup in Boulder, I had a hard enough time getting my sheepskin at Georgia. But boy, going to Colorado, I don't know how the old GPA would have fared. At least I would have had to really, really focus on classes that didn't require attendance, I think, because App State, to a lesser degree, it had that similar sort of like the outdoors are just calling you at all times.
Right.
But Colorado is just an entirely different extent. So just gorgeous out there.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of UW-Madison, just with a dramatically better backdrop. And Madison's not bad. You and I both lived there for a number of years.
Yeah.
It's a good spot to be. But Boulder, a heck of a setup they got here. I should mention before we get too deep, promo code BETROTO, BETROTO. Use that if you are betting on any NFL games this weekend. You got to be doing that over at the BetMGM app. You can use it on BetMGM.com as well. You use our code BETROTO. Your first wager is risk-free. And you're going to hear all about that later in the pod. When John, is this a three-peat on the read?
Sadly, it sure is. The agreed upon arrangement was you don't get off of doing the read unless you get your best bet right. So even if both of us get them wrong, as was the case last week, I'm still the reigning best bet loser. And thanks a lot, Touchdown Tom. The one time that I'm like, okay, let's go Bucks, let's go Tom Brady, and that goes to show me. So I went against my spirit, I went against my soul. And I paid dearly for it, and it will be just redistributed via doing a lengthy read with a lot of phone numbers.
But a read that we love, nonetheless.
We do,
I'll tell you that much. We love doing it. We love BetMGM, and again, make sure you're using that promo code BETROTO if you're throwing down any wagers this weekend. Let's take a quick look back at the week that was Week 5. This was my worst week against the spread so far. You and I, we both write a picks column each week. I do the staff picks column as well. Those are the same picks. I was thinking about that, though. I'm like, maybe I should start mixing it up. Like, I'll just pick complete opposites and see which one comes out better, especially after a week like this last one. I mean, I went 12-4 straight up. Not that that's the hardest thing in the world to do, but a lot of those big numbers that we talked about last week, we ended up getting some close games. My best bet was Green Bay covering. And I think I made the Jags my best bet. I was deciding between
Correct.
Green Bay and the Jags. I think I did end up going with the Jags. I mean, obviously that was completely disastrous. That went about as badly as it could have. And then the other one I was considering, Green Bay, I thought there was no way that the Packers would have a letdown like they did against New England. And of course they were able to escape that game in overtime. I just thought, okay, that was the letdown game. They got through it. That was the wake-up call. It's not happening again. Jonathan, it happened again.
Boy, did it. To your larger point, last week felt like a bit of just a reckoning. I feel like myself included and others kind of had a humbling Week 5 as far as NFL betting against the spread was concerned. I play, or one of the legs in Derek Van Riper's fantasy pentathlon is a spread picks leg of it, and no one was better than 8-8. So, wow. I mean, and these are, sharp guys from around the industry. So these aren't just your average Joes playing in this league.
The sharpest of the sharp.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm in there, for crying out loud, but it was just rough across the board. I felt like, and, so many were close until the very end, and they ended up going the other way and what have you. But at the end of the day, it was a re-establishing by the books. I feel like that, like, yeah, like you think you're running hot right now, and it's time for a nice little slice of humble pie.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a reminder of who runs things in the
Mhm.
sports handicapping world. Yeah, I mean, we saw the Bills take care of a huge number against Pittsburgh. You know, you hit that 98-yarder to Gabe Davis on the first drive, and you could kind of see the writing on the wall. And honestly, I felt that game could have been a much bigger blowout than it ended up being. You know, I ended up getting the Chargers Browns game correct. I picked the correct score on that one. It did not feel like it should have gone that way. I really think Cleveland, for like the third time this year, you know, has completely blown a great chance to win that game. They had an opportunity to put a touchdown or a field goal on the board in their second to last drive. At that point, thinking you might not even get the ball back, we get Jacoby Brissett with an extremely crushing Trevor Lawrence-esque interception in the end zone. And then, of course, Cade York, you know, after the Chargers gifted Cleveland another chance, you know, misses the long field goal that would have won it. The Browns to me are becoming a really difficult team to figure out. I keep saying, like, it feels like they're doing all the right things. Like, they're pounding the run. You know, they're way up there in terms of run rate, and Nick Chubb's running well. Kareem Hunt's running well. Chubb, by the way, very quietly on pace for a 2,000-yard season. You know, and that's 17 games. So maybe
How else does Nick Chubb do anything?
Yeah, he lives
He's a
life
quiet guy.
2,000 yards at a time.
That's right. He's just he's a man who just he goes about his business, and he's going to run through your face for 5 to 50 yards pretty much per pop.
Yeah, he's been incredible. I didn't love that they went away from him late in that game. It was Kareem Hunt who kind of got the final carry. That looked like, you know, they were trying to catch LA off guard, and they ran the ball with no timeouts. Kareem Hunt ends up taking a loss of 1 there. And I get it. You know, maybe you're trying to show pass, and that's why you have Hunt in there. But I didn't love taking Chubb out of that game. And, you know, ultimately, too many pass attempts for Jacoby Brissett, who just continues to kill them. Like, you know, late in the game, it's like all you need to do is just not make a horrific mistake. And he's now 0 for 3 on that request. And I mean, that brings us now, you know, as we kind of transition into week 6, a brutal game to pick between the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots this week. You know, last week to me felt like the first week where, even though my ATS picks ended up being terrible, I at least felt okay about them going into the week. You know, the first few weeks of the season was such a mess. And, you know, week 6 kind of reminds me of that now, where you have a couple big numbers, but for the most part, a lot of really close games that to me feel like 50-50s. And Cleveland right now sitting as a -2.5 point favorite over at BetMGM. That seems about right. I mean, this is such a difficult game.
It really is, because I mean, like you said, the Browns, if nothing else, have been like consistently in all of their games. They just, you know, haven't come out on the right side. New England is the real wild card here, and you know, traditionally under Bill Belichick, they've been amazing against the number. Everyone knows that. The post Tom Brady era, obviously a little bit different, but you know, for last week, they were 3-point favorites against the Lions. They
Yep.
you know, covered that with ease, with, you know, shutting out the number one offense in football at the time, 29-0. So I don't know if I feel like a sucker for buying any sort of, you know, quote unquote momentum, but you know, the Patriots were able to put a scare into the Packers. Maybe that doesn't mean as much as we thought. And then going ahead and thumping the Lions. Obviously, they have to go on the road this time. We still don't know as of this recording who's going to be starting for New England, but even still, I think that Cleveland, and the way that they got gashed on the ground last week, there's going to be so much rushing yardage in this game between Ramondre Stevenson and Nick Chubb, because both these teams really do struggle against the run. And I think that it's important to note that the Browns, they let down against the Falcons the week prior and got run on a little bit, but you know, they got Myles Garrett back, and they got Jadeveon Clowney back, and they still kind of got torched on the ground. So that signals to me that they're not going to be able to fix that problem in season. So you run into a Patriots team that's probably not going to be overly interested in throwing the ball a lot, especially if it's Bailey Zappi out there. And, you know, Ramondre Stevenson, that guy's a battering ram. So that could be really tough. And I give the coaching edge to Belichick. So I like the Patriots to not only cover, but I would consider them on the money line as well this week.
I've been thinking about it myself. You know, it feels like last week was kind of a momentum builder for the Patriots. And you look at, I mean, the Lions are sitting there at 1-4, and it you know, it maybe to a team like New England, it's not that big of a victory. But, the Lions, I think, still felt like a much better team coming into that game last week. And that to me felt like a real reckoning for Detroit, getting completely shut down. I think they were 0 of 6 on fourth downs in that game, just could not convert at key times. And I think that was a kind of a prove it game for New England that, look, we can win with anybody at quarterback. And I think the Browns make enough mistakes as a team that no matter what, New England is going to have a really good chance to win this game. And a lot of those guys you mentioned, I mean, Myles Garrett, questionable as of right now. And so is Jadeveon Clowney. And, Denzel Ward is in concussion protocol as of Thursday as well. So, I mean, there's a lot that could go wrong, I think, injury-wise for Cleveland. They're a team that I think recognizes that it's missed some major opportunities already. And I think if they lose this game at home, things could really go south for the Cleveland Browns, kind of waiting for Deshaun Watson to come back. And I mean, this is something that we'll end up discussing a couple months from now, but I'm not convinced that Deshaun Watson's just going to walk back in and start playing at an MVP level and be ready to save this team. Like, I think they've missed a couple big time opportunities to bank wins that are going to be really, really valuable later in the year.
No, absolutely. I mean, they could be, well out of the playoff hunt by the time that Deshaun Watson takes back over. When you look beyond this game, they go to Baltimore next week. They got a game against Cincinnati the following week, then a bye, and then Miami and Buffalo, all leading up to the much awaited Week 12. But they got to play against Tampa Bay at that point. So I mean, it's a pretty tough sledding here for this Browns team. And again, when you look back at games like the ones against the Falcons and against the Jets in particular, and in last week, I think fits that mold. Like we've been saying, like that's 3 losses that could have very easily been wins. And, that just really, really is going to sting at the end of the day. And they look back at this season and they're a couple games out of the postseason hunt, and they wonder why. It's like, well, blowing it early in the season, I think, is going to have a lot to do with it.
Yeah, somehow you could argue that last week was only their 3rd worst loss of the year in a game that included a end zone interception with like under 5 minutes to play, and then a missed field goal as time expired. I mean, it's been that kind of year already for the Cleveland Browns. As we do every week, let's start taking a look at the Week 6 lines. And we've already done our little preview of Pat's Browns, so we can check that one off the list. But any spreads right now that look just a little bit too high to you?
So I do feel like that Browns one is too high, but I think the 2 that are really drawing my interest is one, the Packers giving 7.5 at home against the Jets. And then the game that I think is breaking my brain the most this week, and that's the Panthers going up against the Rams. Like nobody likes betting on either of these teams, and yet here we are. We have to. And this is a game that if not for fantasy and betting, I think it would fall well below our like interest level radar for just being NFL fans. But you break it down, and there are such good cases to be made on either side of this one. Like, how can you possibly trust the Rams to cover more than 10 points against any NFL team? But then it's like the Panthers aren't just any NFL team. They're a team that just got beaten so badly at home after a string of already like pretty painful losses for them, going ahead and get pushed into the dirt by the 49ers to the point where they, had to clean house a little bit. Baker Mayfield hobbled. It looks like it's going to be PJ Walker time with Sam Darnold and Matt Corral still on IR. And, PJ Walker's guy, Matt Rule, obviously gone now. Now they got to go across the country. It's just like, well, how do the Panthers put up even, something resembling a fight in this spot? Are they in full quit mode, or does the move away from Matt Rule kind of wake them back up a little bit? So that kind of makes them a little bit dangerous. And we'll get to it for Survivor as well, because it's the biggest spread of the week and everything. But it's like, what's your read on this one? Are you kind of on the same page as me as far as like how can you back either of these guys?
100%. And I already had to submit my picks earlier this week, and I'm taking the Panthers to cover. I'm taking the Rams to win. And when I wrote this game up for my Beating the Book column, I essentially said, like, I can't really envision the Rams losing this game, but I also can't envision them running away with it. The Rams, if they were playing almost any other team, I feel like I would pick them to lose this week. But it's Carolina. They just fired their coach. They're on a backup quarterback. However, the Baker to PJ change makes me feel better about this team, right? I think we had seen everything we needed to see out of Baker Mayfield. There are no more excuses. There's no more, oh, he's banged up. The pieces are changing around him. Like, it wasn't good. Like they were in that game against the 49ers until that killer pick six that essentially ended it. And I think you really can't get any worse than the quarterback play that they've gotten from Baker Mayfield thus far. So, I think on the other hand, you could say, well, Baker's been terrible, but there's a reason that they haven't thrown PJ Walker out there. Maybe they trust him even less. And I get that. But I just don't think it could be any worse. And at least PJ Walker can run around. He could give defenses different looks. Like to me, like if I'm the Rams, I'd rather face this team with Baker Mayfield. I think there's a little more predictability there. And I would rather face this team with Matt Rule as the head coach. I think in general, when a coach is fired, you kind of imagine the turmoil and the confusion that could be going on. But when it's a coach who is just a clear sitting duck, and I think everybody knew going into week one, he was likely to be fired at some point this year. I think there's got to be a breath of fresh air for at least some people in that building, right? I mean, you're bringing in Steve Wilkes, a former head coach. It's not somebody who's just going to be directionless. Like I think the Panthers could get a little bit of a bounce here. And again, I don't think they do enough to win this game. I think this is a good, I guess technically a bounce back spot for the Rams, but I also don't feel like we're going to come out of this game being like, all right, the Rams are back, baby.
Yeah, I think I'm just, we've hashed this question at different points this season already, but like, the teams that we're not so sure on, or teams that we don't think are going to turn it around. And I think the Rams are firmly in that discussion. So, I mean, I think the fact that we're even having this discussion at all kind of lets the state of the Rams. They just, it was like the most public bet out there last week. And, I think part of it being that who their opponent was. Everyone loves betting on the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. But even still, like the line kept climbing. In spite of all that, it went from like 4.5 to 5.5. And, the Cowboys did what they did. I don't know if the Panthers quite have the pass rush, of course, that Dallas does to, kind of foul things up for Matthew Stafford. But even still, like, again, just point being, this is a Rams team that I think is pretty busted to even be talking at this length about whether they can cover a spread against the Panthers. I think it says a lot.
Yeah, it says a lot that they are 10.5 point favorites, and it says a lot that we feel so negatively about that. And they are one of those teams. It's like, to me, it's like the Rams and the Bengals are the teams that I can't find myself quitting quite yet. And Denver was in that zone for a little bit. I officially put them in betting jail in my beating the book column this week. They're in jail. I won't be betting on them at all. But with the Rams, it's like, and the Bengals, I mean, these teams were playing each other in the Super Bowl not that long ago. It's like, deep down it's there. With Denver or a team like Jacksonville, that I was really high on a couple weeks ago, it's like, okay, maybe it was fool's gold, but like we know for a fact it's not fool's gold with the Rams and the Bengals because of where they were last year and because of how little shakeup there's been on these rosters. So I think the belief in this spread certainly implies that. The belief is that the Rams will figure it out at some point. They're too talented. They're too well coached. But yeah, right now, man, that offense is really rough. You brought up Packers -7.5. I'm completely with you. These are the two that I pinpointed as well, Rams and Packers. I don't understand how the Packers are getting this kind of respect after the back-to-back games that we've seen from them against the Patriots and the Giants. And I understand last week, wasn't a true home field advantage. So maybe they're getting that bump this week. That's all well and good. But I think the Jets are better than the Giants. I think they're more talented. I think they have more explosive players. Obviously Saquon Barkley is maybe the first guy you would take if you were drafting both of those rosters. But if you're just drafting skill position players between those two teams, it's Saquon 1, and the Jets might have like the next 10 guys.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, yeah. When do you get to David Sills? When do you get to Kenny Galladay in that draft? They might be UDFAs. So yeah, I'm with you there. And, I was trying to think this through as to why it felt so obvious to me that the Jets would be the right side here. And yes, like their last two wins have come against lesser opponents. The Pittsburgh kind of being forced into making their change at quarterback in the middle of that game, and then Pickett obviously throws a bunch of interceptions. And then last week Teddy Bridgewater, already the second quarterback in Miami, he gets knocked out of that game. And it's Skylar Thompson. So it's like, well, of course the Jets should take care of business, but they did. They did in both cases. And it feels like there's a little bit of juice in that building in a way that we haven't seen since the Sanchez. I mean, it's been a minute.
Even then, there wasn't a ton of juice. But no, you're right. You're right. No. I think this team, like, I still am not a Zach Wilson believer. I hope he proves me wrong. I think he's like, the idea of him is really fun. I hope it works out. I haven't quite seen enough yet to buy in, but Brees Hall looks amazing. I think the receiving core that they've put together is really good. The defense is starting to come together. Like, I mean, if I'm Green Bay, like I'm not comfortable with this game at all. I'm certainly not comfortable with the Packers covering 7.5. I love the Jets in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I'm at with it too. And again, with it being past that magic number of 7, you need the Packers to kind of win this one pretty convincingly. And I think just uh, a bit of a refrain that we've had over the course of the season is like the Packers are being priced in a way that is more in line with who they've been in recent years and not who they are this year. Like I don't trust the Packers to win blowouts. Like even when they do beat up on teams or even when they do win, I just very rarely expected, unless it's the Bears, to come by a lot of points. Like maybe the total yardage that they allow, or there are other things to look at to show the ways in which the Packers could have dominated a game, but I don't know if it's really going to show up on the scoreboard that much this year.
Yeah, and even that Bears game, I mean, it was not a wire-to-wire blowout by any means. I think they only won that one by 10 points. They did cover, but it was close. Let's go on the other side. Some lines right now, and there are plenty of small lines this week, so a lot to choose from, but any that look a little too low to you?
So this one might be a sucker one, but I think that the Vikings only giving 3 on the road against a backup quarterback-led Miami Dolphins team. As we're recording this, it looks very likely that it's going to be Skylar Thompson, fun college quarterback, but certainly not someone that you feel great about it in the NFL. And for the Vikings to only be giving 3, it feels almost fishy to me, but like not to the point where I'm going to move off of it. So I would be comfortable taking the Vikings up to 4.5 points. I wonder if this line moves a little bit over the weekend. I doubt it does. Think things should stay pretty static, but I think that the Vikings only giving 3 is a bit low. And then I've been on the record bashing this team, but I feel like the Cardinals only 2.5 points. I feel like they could really kind of take care of business up in Seattle in a pretty significant way. Maybe it's foolish to write off this Seahawks team at this point, the way that they've been playing, especially on offense, and the Cardinals defense certainly not particularly good either. And this is in Seattle, but I think that Seattle has enough problems, and Cardinals that Rondale Moore is back in the fold. They're obviously banged up in the backfield, but I think that they're at their best when they're just kind of turning Kyler loose. I think the Cardinals can win this one by a touchdown.
I think so too. I like that one. I mean, Seattle to me has just been so fluky in some ways week to week. And I think at this point, we just have to respect the offense. I mean, they've only had one down game really all year, and that was San Francisco in week 2, where it kind of felt like, okay, they beat Denver in week 1. That was an emotional game. And this is maybe the real Seattle Seahawks. And it turns out that wasn't really the case either. Like, I think this is a team that's going to pile up points. And I don't love the Cardinals defense, although they are right now, they're hanging around top 10 defense against the pass. So I don't think this is like the greatest spot in the world for Geno Smith, but I'm excited to see what Kenneth Walker can do for Seattle in this game. I don't think that's actually a huge downgrade going from Penny to Walker. I think he's going to give them some juice. Had a really nice play against that New Orleans defense last week. So to me, it's a matter of the Cardinals defense. Like, can they keep Seattle under 30? Because I think the Cardinals have a really good chance to score 35 plus.
Yes. Yeah. So like you said, it's going to come down to how much Seattle slows down this Cardinals attack. They're obviously very familiar with it at this point, with it being year 4 for Kyler Murray. So the offenses remain basically the same there in Arizona. Coaching staff, obviously the same there in Seattle. So they pretty much know what's coming. But, I think it's tricky to deal with those smaller, fast guys like Rondale Moore and Marquise Brown. I think that, the Seattle has these big corners, and they might be at a bit of a disadvantage if they don't get that initial jam off the line. They could totally get lost by those two types of players, and it ends up, in some big plays. So for DFS, I'm going to be all in on this game. I think also partially because so much attention is going to be drawn by the Bills Chiefs game, of course, but I think that this one has, a lot of juice to it. I like the over in this game as well at 50.5. So for me, again, I do think the Cardinals kind of like, reestablish, or I don't know if reestablish is the right word, but I think that they go into Seattle and get this done. And Seattle, just loses another game, as one would expect with a Geno Smith led offense, even though he's kind of been making all of his doubters eat his words all year.
So I like your Minnesota call, and we should note that number has ticked up to 3.5. As of today on BetMGM. So already moving in that direction, and could be a situation where once we do have some clarity on that Dolphins quarterback situation, could move another half point or a point in favor of Minnesota. The only other game I want to bring up in this context is, should the Buccaneers be favored by more than 8.5 on the road at Pittsburgh, or is that about right to you?
Yeah, that's making me feel icky as well. I think that you really kind of have to draw on how bad the Steelers are in order to really get behind the Bucs at that number at more than a touchdown, because that the Steelers are a well-coached team, and we talked about it last week. We're just simply not used to seeing a plus number that high next to the Steelers logo, but that's just kind of where they are right now. This is obviously a better setup for Pittsburgh with it being at home, but that Bucs defense is better than the Bills one, and it's a scary bunch. Defense travels, so I expect them to force some turnovers, and I just don't think at the end of the day that you can really trust Pittsburgh to score like more than 14 points. I don't think that this Tampa Bay offense is clicking, and I don't think that they necessarily like get right here, but again, by extension of just thinking that the Steelers aren't going to be able to put up much on the scoreboard, I just feel like that this has the smell of like a 24-13 win for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I would like to see a game where we really see Tampa's offense unleashed. And, I know they put up a decent amount of points against Kansas City, but they're playing from behind. They completely abandoned the run in that game, only had 6 rushing attempts all night. It didn't really feel like a cohesive effort by that offense. And I mean, there's such a key difference when Chris Godwin is healthy. That changes everything for them, having more than one true weapon. But it does still feel like they're kind of struggling to replace Gronk. We're already in the same old narrative when it comes to Julio Jones. I mean, it kind of feels like he's going to end this season playing in like 4 or 5 regular season games. And we're going to look back and kind of feel like fools. I already am for getting excited about what he could be in that offense, but they miss him, man. Like this has been a really, really tame version of the Buccaneers. And they're one of those teams that has absolutely earned the benefit of the doubt with Tom Brady at quarterback. And they're going to be a scary opponent no matter what, even if this is what the offense looks like throughout the entire regular season. But you got to think at some point that they're going to start establishing themselves on that side of the ball, but they haven't really had to because the defense has been so good.
Yeah, exactly. So the pieces, as they come back, it should kind of result in this offense clicking. I think that the offensive line, with dating back to Ali Marpet retiring and Ryan Jensen going out for the season, like I think that offensive line needs some time to gel. And fortunately for them, they don't have to go up against TJ Watt this week. So I just don't really feel like the Steelers defense is commensurate with what we're used to seeing out of them. So maybe, again, I don't fully feel like this is the week that everything clicks for old touchdown Tom and the Bucs offense, but I still think the defense is so good that they just keep the Steelers kind of trending towards maybe the Steelers are on the clock by the end of the season. I mean, it's looking pretty rough there in Pittsburgh. Sorry to see it.
Yeah, I could tell the pain in your voice. That was very authentic. Crying for the Pittsburgh Steelers. John, I believe, if I'm correct here, we have a message from the folks at BetMGM.
You know what? You're right. We absolutely do. And here it is. Kick off the new pro football season with the king of sportsbooks. Sign up with BetMGM using bonus code BETROTO. That's BETROTO. And your first wager is risk-free up to $1,000. Visit betmgm.com for terms and conditions. Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, Tennessee, Virginia, Washington, D.C., West Virginia, Wyoming, or Ontario only. Must be 21 years or older to wager, or 19 years or older in Ontario. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, D.C., Kansas, Louisiana, Nevada, Wyoming, or Virginia. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-GAMBLER. In Indiana, Maryland, New Jersey, or West Virginia, 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Iowa, 1-800-981-0023. In Puerto Rico, call 877-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In New York, call or text the Tennessee Red Line at 800-889-9789 in Tennessee, or call 1-888-777-9696 in Mississippi. In Ontario, if you have questions or concerns about your gambling or someone close to you, please contact Connects Ontario at 1-866-531-2600 to speak to an advisor free of charge. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Ohio, Utah, and other states where prohibited. Promotional offers not available in Nevada or New York.
Whew. Another domination. Back to back to back dominations by John McKechnie. Hopefully you get off the
I can't dominate my
this
best bets, but I can dominate the reads, baby.
Yeah. I mean, what a consolation knowing that, even if your best bet doesn't hit, at least you get to do that read.
Yeah. I do have fun with it. It's a good time, and we build it up nicely. It's a fun little thing.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't do a ton of reading other than like reading sports articles, so it's good practice if nothing else. You really got to kind of warm up. You got to get the tongue into it. You got to you got to make sure your wind is there. Like, it's not often that you're going to have to read something aloud that's that long and that intricate.
No, exactly. So there's an art and a science to it all. And we're getting it dialed in.
I think we are. All right, John, I want to take a look at some futures. And last week I threw a few at you, just kind of a would you bet it, won't you bet it? I just want to do a general overview. We have not really checked in on Super Bowl odds since week one. And it feels like we're far enough into the year now, almost 1/3 of the way through the regular season, that we could kind of reset. We could decide which teams, actually feel like contenders, which teams do not. I think there's a pretty fine line right now. It feels like we have, 3, 4, 5 really good teams at the top, and then everybody else is all pretty closely matched. But Bills right now are the favorites at BetMGM plus 325. You got the Chiefs at plus 550, the Eagles at plus 650, Buccaneers 10-1, Niners 14-1, Packers 14-1, Ravens 14-1, the Dallas Cowboys sitting at 18-1. Do any of those pique your interest before we get into some longer shots?
Yeah, it is, pretty noticeable how the top three have kind of separated themselves, with the Bills, Chiefs, and the Eagles. Most notably, the Eagles have really moved up the board since the start of the season, and deservedly so, being undefeated as they are. The Bucs, I would fade that at plus 1,000. We were just talking about them as big favorites against Pittsburgh, of course, but it's a whole different discussion. Otherwise, I don't know if they quite have the offensive firepower to hang with the Chiefs or the Bills. I'm a little bit skeptical. I still need to see a little bit more from the Eagles. I was more sold on them just a couple weeks ago, but a couple of like meh-ish performances. I still like them at plus 650. Those are still good odds. I still view them as the best team in the NFC, but I'm not sure that they're better than either the Bills or the Chiefs. I would fade the Packers from that group. I'd fade the Ravens. The Cowboys are kind of interesting because, if they're able to kind of keep afloat, or even, if they're able to just straight up win this game Sunday night and kind of like position themselves really well in the NFC East, and then Dak Prescott comes back, and that defense is one of the best in the league, and the offense like really hasn't even been unlocked yet. the Cowboys are pretty interesting to me, I think, at plus 1,800.
I'm with you on that. I really like the Cowboys at plus 1,800. Baltimore at 14-1 is interesting to me. I think that defense is going to continue to get better. It does feel like there may be like one reliable playmaker short. Although, once as J.K. Dobbins, continues to work back up to speed, maybe we start to feel better about Baltimore. But it is tough. You're talking about, if you're making this bet, it's not getting to the Super Bowl, it's winning the Super Bowl, right? So if you're an NFC team, it's like, okay, yeah, you can get there. If you're the Eagles, you can see the path. But are you going to beat the Bills? Are you going to beat the Chiefs? If you're the Ravens, are you going to get by maybe having to play both of those teams on the way to the Super Bowl? I mean, as of right now, like it just feels like almost inconceivable that the Bills or the Chiefs won't be representing the AFC. But at the same token, we've seen so many crazy upsets over the years that I try not to worry too much about what the actual Super Bowl matchup would be. Like if that Giants team could beat the undefeated Patriots, I don't think the Bills are invincible, even if they make a dominant run to the Super Bowl. So to me, I'm kind of looking at some of these NFC teams, and I'm kind of with you. Like I've soured a little bit on the Bucks. You can see them getting there for sure. Obviously, they've done it before, and I think they are the team. If you're comparing them to the 49ers, the Packers, the Cowboys, the Vikings are at 20-1. Like to me, Tampa Bay might still have the highest baseline. Like you're going to get great quarterback play. The defense is going to show up. Some of those other teams to me have bigger questions. So like I understand why the Buccaneers are 10-1, but I don't think they have the highest ceiling of those NFC contenders.
No, I don't either. So I think, that is the correct read. Yeah, the NFC is funky because I think you framed it so well, where winning the NFC and winning the Super Bowl are just two different things. I mean, we've been talking about, like, since the offseason, and when, and some of it has obviously fallen flat as far as how murderous the AFC West is in particular. But there's still some pretty. It's still a tougher conference on balance, I would say, than the NFC. The NFC kind of top heavy. The Niners, of course, are pretty interesting as well. But I just don't feel like for sure that betting on any of these NFC teams, it feels great going up against what again, like we're expecting Bills or Chiefs on the other side of that. Not that it's impossible, but we'll see.
All right, so I'm going to throw out a couple teams like 20-1 and beyond that are at least intriguing to me. Intriguing. I'm not saying I'm going to bet it, but intriguing. We got to name the Chargers. They're at 22-1 right now. A massive discount, relative to where you would have got this team coming into the year. It does feel like they've underachieved, and yet they're still in a great spot to at least make the playoffs. It looks like the AFC West is probably going to belong to the Kansas City Chiefs. However, a lot of time to go. They'll play head-to-head one more time later in the season. But they're at least in a good spot to get into the dance. They've avoided disaster a couple times already this year, and I think they're going to be healthier at the end of the season than they are right now. I think that's going to be a team that could potentially still be pretty scary, although I do have some major questions about their coaching. The Cincinnati Bengals at 30-1. This team was, of course, in the Super Bowl last year, retaining almost that entire roster. I think they're maybe better than they were on offense last year, at least in terms of the talent, progression. But obviously the results have not been there quite yet. So at 30-1, I think that's a team that you're probably not going to see any higher than this going forward, unless they really underachieve. And then the last one that I will throw out to you, and I don't love it, but the Tennessee Titans at 66-1.
Ooh.
A team that has a history of just finding ways to win. They're in a terrible division. They're going to have a really good chance to make the playoffs. And when you're talking about teams that are beyond 50-1, just like saying, like, yes, I feel good about this team making the playoffs, and then maybe something crazy happens and they make a run. I don't know, 66-1. Am I that crazy for even like having that thought come into my mind?
No, because like you said, the path to the division crown and therefore a home playoff game is there, and then anything can happen. And they're obviously an experienced team in the postseason, so it hasn't always resulted in them going extremely far. Them being the 1 seed last year and then flopping. But this is still a team that made the AFC Championship a couple of years ago with a lot of that core still remaining. Again, you worry about the top end upside when it comes to their group of pass catchers, but extremely well coached, and the run game is going to continue to be a problem for everyone else to load up against, especially in a league where the Titans become a bit of an anomaly when you're game planning for them, because everyone else is so concerned with, slowing down these amazing passing attacks across the league. And you get just this sledgehammer of a run game with Derrick Henry and company. So yeah, that's an interesting one. And then I think another one that I would toss out there is Miami Dolphins, because it's not that long ago that we were like, are they, going to be, serious noisemakers in the AFC? And
Maybe the Bills.
They beat the Bills, man. And obviously a couple losses here to the Bengals and the Jets, but those are losses. But you got to take into account that, Tua was not out there for most of those. And, they've had some banged up pass catchers over these last couple of weeks. So if they can get right and get healthy, I think that this might be like the time to buy low on Miami. And I think we could see these odds climb as they get healthy.
That's a really good call. I like that a lot. I think the tone on Miami has changed so dramatically over the last 2 weeks, really since the Tua injury. And it feels like it's been all negativity. They've kind of had to deal with this firestorm of criticism around all that. And it really feels to me like these next couple of weeks are going to be a huge inflection point for them, because obviously losing Bridgewater the way that they did, like the first play of the game last week, like they really had no chance to win that game. And, Skylar Thompson, bless his heart, it was just not prepared for that. And he probably shouldn't have been, right? I mean, it was just a really tough spot, given everything that had happened. So, they could, I think this whole Tua thing could end up kind of enveloping their entire season and just being this overwhelming narrative that they're not able to push through. And in some ways that would be acceptable. I mean, it's just been kind of a mess. But if he comes back and everything looks good and he's able to avoid any further injury, I don't think there's any reason to think that this team, can't be as dangerous as any. Like you said, I mean, we saw them contain the Bills on defense. They hit big plays when they needed to. They are the team that I think, nobody is going to feel comfortable against a full strength Miami Dolphins team. Like, you could be up, you could be the Chiefs. It could be Chiefs Dolphins in the divisional round. The Chiefs could be up like 24-7 at halftime, but the Dolphins are that team that, you just hit a couple long shots to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and all of a sudden you're right back in it. I want to talk some Coach of the Year odds as well before we get to the rest of the Week 6 games and then start talking some Survivor. Coach of the Year is really, really interesting every single year. And oftentimes I feel like it just kind of goes to like, who's been the biggest surprise coach? And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Right now, though, Nick Sirianni, plus 150 at BetMGM to win Coach of the Year, the heavy favorite over Brian Dable, who's at 6-1. Then you get into Mike McDaniel and Kevin O'Connell at 12-1. I think there's a pretty big drop off after that. Somehow Brandon Staley is 16-1. I would put him at like 16,000-1. I don't think he has any chance. Like, does anybody feel like he's done even like an average job so far? I mean, that is crazy to me. Right now, it feels like a 3-man race between Sirianni, Dable, and McDaniel. And I thought McDaniel had the upper hand a couple weeks ago. And I think, I think some people still maybe think he was involved in the Tua situation. I think that's kind of going to hurt his overall, not reputation, but just the way I think that we perceive him in the short term. So if it's down to Sirianni and Dable, to me, I almost feel like those odds should be reversed the way that this award has tended to go, to the kind of upstart surprise coach. Like, I think Brian Dable has done significantly more with significantly less than Sirianni has. And Sirianni's done a fantastic job, of course, but I think to me, I would bet Dable right now at 6-1.
Yes, I would too. I'm a little bit surprised that it's so decidedly Sirianni as the favorite. I mean, again, if the Eagles continue, like the way that you can win a Coach of the Year, I think is to just like you have like a record that leaves no doubt to the point where like what usually is the case where it's narrative based. If it's like a first year head coach, like they tend to have a leg up on this type of award. But if like it's just that resounding of a season from this Eagles team, if they end up going like 14-3 or something, and are the number one seed in the NFC, then maybe it does go to Sirianni. One that I'm interested in that it's lower than Brandon Staley. It's another NFC East coach, but don't you think that Mike McCarthy, and just by extension of them staying competitive without Dak Prescott, can't you hear isn't this a great coaching job from Mike McCarthy? Just hitting the airwaves all over the place. Like I feel like I feel like that wouldn't surprise me at all. And I'm a little bit surprised, frankly, that I think a lot of people and myself included, aren't like the biggest Mike McCarthy guys.
Right.
But I mean, shoot, like for them to be doing what they're doing right now without their starting quarterback, and to be doing it with Cooper Rush is pretty wild. So I mean, they kind of alluded to it after Dak went out, where it's like everyone's going to have to be better to make up for this, and everyone has been better. So I think that there is something to be said for that, and you can get McCarthy at 20-1 right now. So I think that I'm interested in him among these long shots, certainly more than guys like Peterson or Brandon Staley.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. It's funny. I kind of skipped right over Mike McCarthy, and I think that's the prevailing belief that you mentioned, that everybody's just like, yeah, he's not a good coach. Why would he ever win Coach of the Year? But no, I mean, if ever there was a time, it would be now. And I think a lot of people went into this year thinking this would maybe be Mike McCarthy's last year in Dallas. I think maybe thinking that he could maybe even not finish out the year if things go south. But yeah, I think everybody's talking about Cooper Rush and all the credit he deserves for kind of steadying this ship without Dak. But yeah, it feels like in almost any other scenario, the coach would be getting a ton of credit here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that he's not. So that maybe that gets a little bit louder as the season goes on, and we kind of see how real or fake that this kind of hot start from the Cowboys out of nowhere proves out to be. But as it stands, I think that a feather in a cap as far as Coach of the Year goes is coaching through a certain level of adversity. And I mean, losing your quarterback late in the first game of the season for an extended period, I think certainly qualifies as that. And for them to be playing as well as they have in his absence, I think it says a lot.
All right, let's go rapid fire through these games that we haven't hit yet in week 6. And we'll start with one of the games in the early window. 49ers at the Atlanta Falcons, 5.5. Of course, in favor of San Francisco is the number right now at BetMGM. And again, make sure you're using our code BETROTO if you're using the BetMGM app or betting on BetMGM.com. I like the spot, of course, for San Francisco. And you're not going to find a lot of people taking Atlanta straight up. They're banged up. Kyle Pitts missed last week. We'll see what his status ends up being. They're still without Cordero Patterson, but found a way to storm back against the Buccaneers. Should have had one last chance to potentially win that game. And who knows what happens if they get the ball back. I think Atlanta has been displaying record levels of friskiness all year. They've been a fun team to watch. They've been like overall a bad team, but kind of a really fun and engaging bad team. And I think the 49ers take care of business, but second straight trip across the country. They were in Carolina last week. I don't know that this is as much of a pushover game as last week became for San Francisco.
No, it definitely isn't. 1 point though, I did look into this as if the Niners needed to have their arms twisted to do this, but I believe they've stayed at the Greenbrier this week, so that they've been able to stay on the East Coast so that they don't have to ping pong back and forth. But yeah, I mean, the Falcons are the only team that's perfect against the spread this year. That's really impressive stuff from them. That goes to show you that every single week they're beating expectations. But I feel like the 49ers, they are banged up. We talked about that fact on the XM show the other night with Jim Coventry. Maybe that is being underserved as far as this line is concerned. But I'm starting to get a feeling about this 49ers team. I think that defense is just so gnarly. And I also just think that we haven't seen the Marcus Mariota meltdown game, even though he's like tried to have meltdowns at various points this season.
He's been trying so hard.
I know, right? Like he's doing his darndest. And I think that this is the week that it comes back to bite him. So for me, I'm fairly strong on the Niners in this spot, even with the Falcons being cover machines.
All right. So we've hit Pats, Browns. We've hit Jets, Packers. It's time. Jags, Colts.
Jags corner.
Colts, 2-point favorites. This line's been bouncing between 2.5 all week. I don't know what to do anymore, man. I'm so down on the Jags and so down on Trevor Lawrence specifically. I mean, he's almost single-handedly lost them the last 2 games. I'm starting to really question whether he's the guy. I think he has just a super high floor long term. Still, it's like, but coming out of the draft, it was not unrealistic to think this guy could be a Mahomes, Herbert, Rodgers. I wouldn't go as far as to say Brady level quarterback, but in that tier. And I'm almost ready to write that off as even a possibility at this point. There's just there haven't been enough wow plays. There's
What
not
is
been a
the, yeah,
single
what
game.
is the deal?
The deal is that he is not consistent week to week. He can make the throws when they're wide open, but he's not like, you don't need to be making these crazy, Mahomes type of throws across your body or, on the run, flinging it 50 yards. Like, you don't have to do that. But like, I don't know, like the best quarterbacks make those throws every now and then. And, in addition to not hitting those, like he's starting to sail, wide open throws. He's making terrible decisions, like that interception in the end zone to Derek Stingley. I mean, that might have been the single worst throw in the NFL this season. I mean, that was just a total gut punch, especially at that point in the game where the Jags absolutely needed to score. I don't know what to think anymore. Like I've adjusted my Trevor Lawrence expectation to, I hope he can become Matt Ryan rather than I hope he can become Justin Herbert.
Wow. I mean, strong, but fair. I think the numbers and the performance back up what you say. Like for every wow throw, it feels like there's a bunch of missed opportunities and equal amount of killer mistakes there. So, I mean, how does that apply this time around? Indianapolis all salty and well rested, but still remembering what happened in Jacksonville in week 2. Do they get even on the ledger here?
Well, I mean, they're 2-point favorites, and they are at home for this one. It sounds like Jonathan Taylor will likely be back. He was still pretty limited earlier this week, but was able to get back in practice. So I don't know, man. Like I don't come out of that Thursday night game against Denver like feeling great about Indianapolis, right? But I also am like, the Jags just lost at home to the Texans. So what do? Right? I mean, I think I'm convinced that the Colts are not a good team. They've been much more of a mess from start to finish thus far than the Jaguars have. But the Jaguars have also, reproven last week that they are capable of losing to just about anybody. And Trevor Lawrence has yet to prove that he's the type of quarterback that could put these performances behind him, right? Like there's the best quarterbacks in the league when they have a bad game, and it happens. Like Patrick Mahomes did not have a great game when they lost to the Colts a few weeks ago, but you're never like, well, I don't know if Patrick Mahomes is good anymore. It's like, you just know, like for the rest of the year on balance, he's going to be great 90 to 95% of the time. I don't feel that way with Lawrence. Like I feel like there could be a snowball effect here. So I'm approaching this one with caution. I have not decided where I'm going to put my real money this week. I believe I took the Jags to cover in staff picks. In my pick'em league, this is way at the bottom. It's only ahead of the Bears Commanders game, which is the toss up of all toss ups. And I just don't know what to think. I don't know what to think of this Jags team. On paper, they should be the better team. They've already proven once that they can demolish this Indianapolis team, but I kind of have this like feeling in the back of my mind that they're gradually reverting to the same old Jags.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there, and I think I'm just kind of following along that thread to where like it's getting hard to trust Jacksonville again. Just when we're about ready to be like, okay, there's something here. They go ahead and pull a performance like they did a week ago. So I think I will just kind of hold my nose and take Indianapolis in this one. And if there was like a bright spot from last week, other than just straight up winning, looks like Alec Pierce might be a guy. So if you're into the props, maybe a little anytime touchdown sprinkle on
he's
on
on
Mr.
he's
Pierce.
on dude watch for sure.
Yeah, I mean he was fighting back to the ball, these horrible ducks that Matt Ryan was throwing, and just physically just kind of dominating, and like his combine performance was insane. So he's got serious tools, and Michael Pittman's good, but I feel like they've needed that number 2 basically all along, and it feels like Pierce is ready to be that guy.
Yeah, this is going to be a like Sunday at 11:59 a.m. Type of lock it in for me. I don't know. I need to get a couple more sleeps on this one. All right, let's go quickly through the rest of these. Bengals at Saints. Bengals -2 on the road at New Orleans. We've seen the Saints, kind of get some respect, especially at home in these games this season. But the Bengals too, I think, are one of those teams that, much like the Rams, still getting some benefit of the doubt from years past. And they're a team to me that they have not looked nearly as disastrous as the Rams have. Like watching the Rams has not been a pleasurable experience this year. Like to me, it's still there with the Bengals. They're just, it's just like, man, if they just had made this conversion, or they just, ran this play instead of doing a shovel pass to their 7th string receiver on the goal line, maybe that would have been different. So I do feel like the Bengals are that team that could turn the corner really quickly and become a threat. But we're 5 weeks in and they still haven't done that. So we'll see, man. And I think it's encouraging though that, Seattle was able to score on the Saints defense. I think if Seattle could do that, and they are an offense that we have to respect, that's for sure. But I think if Seattle could do that, if Cincy comes in with a healthy T. Higgins, I'm pretty confident they'll be able to put up some points.
Yeah, and it seems like the action is firmly on the Bengals. So it feels like I think a lot of people feel like this is a discount, like there's a good buying opportunity for the Bengals. I'm going to cut the other way. I feel like the Saints, they have some sort of strange voodoo cooking down there, and for them to be as close as they were in London, come back the following week and cover the spread against the Seahawks. I'm just going to keep going. I feel like the Saints win this one outright, and it doesn't totally shock me that the number is this low and that people are being kind of not encouraged necessarily, but emboldened to be like, oh, Bengals only they only have to win by a field goal. It's like, not so fast, my friend. I think the Saints could win this one.
They absolutely can. We're starting to just kind of have some questions about this offense too. I mean, Olave goes with the concussion. Michael Thomas, has been banged up these last few weeks after his good start. Obviously, the quarterback situation is in flux, and you also can't depend on moving the ball on the Seattle defense every single week, right? Like that's as easy as it's going to get all year, and you're not going to get 4 touchdowns out of Taysom Hill every single week. So I actually think I think like the Bengals defense matches up pretty well with what New Orleans wants to do. I don't really trust either of those quarterbacks right now, Dalton or Jameis, whoever's under center this week. Ravens Giants. Ravens 6-point favorites on the road at New York. I really like this spot for Baltimore. I know you're coming off of an emotional, divisional game against the Cincinnati Bengals at home this past week. And I think this is one of those games where Baltimore played badly enough to lose on offense and didn't. And I think you come out of that feeling like, all right, look, we survived that one. Now let's keep it rolling. And I cannot buy in on the Giants yet. Deep down, I really don't think this is a good team.
They're not a good team. They're well coached. They're good. They're like kind of what we wanted the Lions to be, in the sense of like that they're winning the close games. They'll drag you into the deep waters or whatever Dan Campbell was saying in Hard Knocks. So it feels like the Giants have that vibe. So like the Ravens definitely need to come correct here in order to escape with a victory, or let alone covering the spread. I could see backing the Giants here, but I don't see them winning, which I know is always like a tricky little line to be walking. But I do feel like the Ravens win. I think that J.K. Dobbins is starting to get in gear. I thought he looked good on limited work this past week. If they get Rashad Bateman back, great, but it doesn't really change everything. Mark Andrews can still do damage. Devin Duvernay proving to be a capable receiver out there as well. And I just think that this Giants offense, it's so limited in what it can do that they can't really hurt the Ravens in a way that a team with a competent passing attack can. So Baltimore hasn't been great against the run, to be clear. So I wouldn't like fade Saquon and DFS or anything, but I think the Ravens are going to spend extra attention on him and then just kind of make Daniel Jones beat them. Another interesting detail: Giants defensive coordinator Wink Martindale, former longtime Ravens defensive coordinator. So we'll see what he has cooked up, what he noticed over the years with this Ravens offense and what he can do to maybe exploit it. I'm interested to see how the Giants come out on defense.
I love that you said Wink Martindale and then cooked up, because I feel like that's like what 90% of the time when the name Martindale is mentioned, cooked up is followed closely after that. It's like, well, what is Martindale going to cook up here on this third down? Like he's always just cooking.
He's not cooking sleeves. I know that much. That guy hates a sleeve.
Yeah, disgusted by the sight of a sleeve. All right, we talked Bucks Steelers. I think we both like the Bucks in that situation, even if it's yet another like semi-unconvincing win for Tampa. Let's go all the way down to Bills Chiefs. Somehow we've gone the entire episode without talking about like what's easily the biggest game of the year so far, and might go down as the single biggest regular season game all year. Bills -2.5 at Kansas City. A little bit of disrespect here, especially with the Chiefs offense rolling. I know the defense looked a little bit shaky, gave up some big plays against the Raiders on Monday night, but I'm a little surprised here. Although I will say, I agree with the line. I think the Buffalo Bills really want this game. I think they've had this game circled since the day that the schedule came out. I think that this is going to mean a lot more to them than it is to Kansas City. These are two teams that are already, kind of in charge in their divisions. Like I can't see Kansas City working itself up for this game as much as Buffalo will. And the Bills also have one extra day to prepare.
See, that's the true difference with the gambling podcast, because usually this game like leads every single like bit of media this week, but
Yeah.
nah, man. Like we got to figure out if the Panthers can cover 10.5
Hey,
before
they're
we
all
get
equal to us.
See, exactly. So, yeah, this is, I believe, the first time that Patrick Mahomes has been a home underdog since taking over in Kansas City. But I'm with you. I think that the Bills kind of established themselves at the top of the AFC. I am, I guess, my big takeaway from more specifically this past Monday, the Raiders game, and how it applies to Buffalo is that Buffalo can't hurt Kansas City the same ways, but they also have Josh Allen, which the Raiders do not. Last time I checked, but I felt like Josh Jacobs was running all over the Chiefs. I don't know if the Bills can really make the Chiefs' run defense pay for it, but they still have Josh Allen, so I still feel like the Bills' defense a little bit stronger. I think it's important. I think this might be the week where not having Tyreek Hill really kind of ends up hurting the Chiefs. So like for the first time all year, we really feel the difference of a Tyreek Hill less Kansas City offense, and so I feel like they're not going to be able to get those quick scores to respond every single time. They got to be a little bit more methodical. And the more plays that you're running against this Bills defense, I think the trickier it might get. So I will go Bills.
Yeah, it feels like that's the prevailing belief this week is that Buffalo, really the revenge factor I think is going to be played up a ton, and rightfully so. And I think the Bills are going to make this their Super Bowl, and it's a tight line to walk as a team that is competing for the real Super Bowl as well. Like you don't want to pour everything into some random Week 6 game, but I really think that they want to send a message to Kansas City in this game, and I know you and I both try to not buy into the narrative-y type of stuff like that, but this is an exception for me. Like I truly think we're going to see Buffalo come out and have like a really spirited effort. But you watch Patrick Mahomes these last couple of weeks, like especially in that Raiders game, like he's fired up. Like I don't know if I'm now going to go right back into these same tropes. Like I don't know if he's heard the like Justin Herbert is catching up, that Josh Allen might be better than him narrative, that type of thing. But like he does kind of seem like he has a little bit of a mean streak this season that wasn't necessarily there for a lot of last year.
Yeah, he threw up the fours. Like he was keeping count of
He's fighting his
of the
offensive
Kelsey.
coordinator.
Yeah, no, Joker-fied Mahomes is a scary guy to go against. I'll give you that.
Yeah. All right. Cowboys, Eagles, and Broncos, Chargers are our lone remaining games. Those are the Sunday and Monday standalone games this week. We got the Dallas Cowboys sitting as 6.5-point dogs at Philadelphia. I like the Eagles to win this game. I've kind of been waiting week by week for Cooper Rush to finally lose. Maybe he's just never going to lose. That we have to consider that possibility at this point. This might finally be the week though where Dallas is just a little too overmatched. I think they've kind of had this uncanny ability the last few weeks of just like catching whatever team has like the worst offensive line at the time, just has to play the Cowboys the next week. And I think that this is finally kind of a bad matchup for Dallas.
No, I think that's totally fair to wait for the other shoe to drop as far as Cooper Rush goes, and the Eagles can certainly make that happen. But I think on the other side, I don't feel like we've seen Jalen Hurts like get knocked around or like knocked off his spot, be made super uncomfortable just yet. And the Cowboys are the team that can make that happen. So for this line to have climbed up, I think it was like 5.5 earlier this week. I think I'm on the Cowboys here. I think that, Jalen Hurts is a good player when things are going right. And I think that this is a spot where the Cowboys, you'll have to keep an eye on Micah Parsons because I know he's been dealing with the groin. But if he's out there, this Dallas defense is scary enough to where like Jalen Hurts might look a little, we might see some of the college Jalen Hurts that we knew and didn't expect to be a very, very good NFL quarterback. So I think that I like the direction that the line is going as someone who is going to back the Cowboys here.
Ooh, all right. I mean, it's getting a little big for me. I'll say that. I think this should probably be hanging in like the 5.5 range. Getting up 6.5 to 7 to me is a little bit disrespectful for this Dallas defense. Broncos, Chargers. Denver just plays every game in primetime. these days. I don't know what to expect from this team at all anymore. Russell Wilson, underwent some sort of shoulder procedure this week, and that doesn't seem like it's moving in the right direction. I think the coaching remains pretty disastrous. The injuries continue to pile up for Denver, and yet the Chargers are one of those teams that you don't necessarily trust, even with all the talent. They have injuries of their own. They always kind of find ways to, even when they're up big on the Texans, all of a sudden that becomes a one-score game, and they're fumbling kickoffs and they're making bad decisions. Like I like the Chargers to win this game at home, but again, not a team that has a great home field advantage. There's just enough here that I could see the Broncos like in almost a like Left for Dead bounce back situation. I mean, they've absolutely hit rock bottom last week. You think it can't get any worse than that? Like I think the Chargers are going to be really, really heavily bet in this game. I know it's like they're getting like 3/4 of the bets so far. Everybody's jumping off Denver. Like, is there any hope for the Broncos to bounce back here, or is this just a lock-in Chargers -5 and put it away?
Yeah, I'm not seeing it for the Broncos. I think that this is another very public, very ugly showing by them. And yeah, I mean, as much as I don't love backing the Chargers with significant numbers, I just think that the Broncos are that bad, and I think that their coach kind of like is going to almost afford the Chargers like 2 points by his own bad decision making. So
Yeah.
I just feel like this sets up to where the Broncos, even if they play their best game of the season, I think it ends up not being enough. So I do like the Chargers as public as it is. I just can't find any sort of scenario that I run through in my head where the Broncos do this, which of course invariably means that they will. But for now, hard out on Denver.
All right, let's do Survivor picks and best bets, and then we're out of here. Who are you taking in Survivor, and who are the teams that you're thinking about fading?
So I think I'm going to fade the Rams. I know that they are one of the few like kind of layups this week. But I just feel like that there's something weird brewing with that game. And if I don't like them against the spread, I think Survivor, I'm going to be out on that as well, even though, the number is much different. Them only winning by 9 points, not the same as them losing outright. So I think my Survivor pick this week, and I hate doing road teams, but I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. I just think that this sets up pretty well for them going up against a banged up Dolphins team that might be starting Skylar Thompson.
Okay. I like it. I like the Bucks if you still have them available. And I should note, for purposes of integrity, I got knocked out of the RotoWire Survivor contest last week by taking the Jags. So I'm going to be taking like simulated reps the rest of the way. Much like an injured Russell Wilson, I'll be doing like a simulated Survivor pick each week, and that's what
the
it's Christian
Hackenberg special mental reps.
Yes, exactly. I'm taking a lot of mental reps for next year's Survivor contest. I like the Bucks. I think they're in a good spot if you have them left, and then I really like the Ravens to kind of turn the Giants back into a pumpkin this week. And the Giants are so well coached, and they've made the best with what they have that I could see them keeping this game close, especially if that Baltimore secondary falters a little bit. But if we're just talking straight up, like I don't see the Ravens losing that game. So I like Baltimore quite a bit. I have the Rams as my fade as well. Again, it's almost inconceivable that they lose this game given everything that's going on with Carolina. But I don't know, man. You could just kind of see it. Like Matthew Stafford, fumbles, and all of a sudden Carolina has the ball at the 5-yard line, and they're up 7-0, and there's a little bit of panic, and all of a sudden this like, are they playing harder for Steve Wilkes narrative starts to emerge. Like, it's just not something I want a part of.
No, absolutely not. So, I mean, you see the vision, you get it. And I think like the important thing to note in Survivor, yes, a lot of the time, like the most popular team, it is the right pick, but on those weeks that it's not, you get a huge amount of leverage on the field if everyone kind of falls off the cliff. And this week where it seems like the Rams are so far and away going to be the most popular selection, given what they've given us as far as sample goes so far this year, and they're getting like a third of the Survivor picks this week. Oh man, like I can't quite go there. I can't go for that, as Hall & Oates once said.
Give me your lock. Give me your lock of the week. A fourth straight read could be on the line here.
Zach Wilson, don't do it to me, baby. 7.5 points. Jets cover that.
Jets to cover 7.5 at the Green Bay Packers. I like it. That was on my list. Once I saw you were taking it for the sake of competition, I didn't want to have a double lock. I'm taking the Ravens -6.
I
I
hope you're
said I would
right.
take them in Survivor. I would take them against the spread as well. I think they cover this. I think they look really good. I think we start to have some questions about the Giants for those of us who aren't questioning that. And it feels like just about everybody is. But to me, it feels like New York has been cruising for a bruising for a while. And I think the Baltimore Ravens are the team that hands it to them.
Yeah, the Ravens traditionally like that they beat the teams that are not better than them, and I think the Giants qualify in this particular instance. They struggle against the better teams, but
Yep.
usually they can kind of take care of business in pretty resounding fashion when they have the edge.
All right. Looking forward to another amazing week in the NFL. Week 6 is going to be fun. I mean, it's a shame that we have 4 teams on bye. Going from 16 to 14 games is like already kind of devastating. Like, I'm not looking forward to some of those bigger bye weeks in the middle of the season. But if you're throwing down any wagers this weekend, make sure you're doing that over at betmgm.com or the BetMGM app. You can use promo code BETROTO, BETROTO. Get that first bet risk-free. Very much looking forward to watching football on Sunday, John. Got another wedding back in Wisconsin on Saturday. So I'm kind of doing like the Tony Stewart 2 races in one day type of
Oh my
situation.
gosh.
So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a whirlwind weekend, but look, we got legal sports betting out here in Colorado. So that's been huge. Looking forward to enjoying that over the next couple of days.
I was going to say, like the wedding scheduling gods really did kind of bless it, because you could have been put in a spot with 2 Saturday weddings, and then you got to pick, and it's like, oh my God, how do I justify this? How do I tell the person whose wedding I'm not going to? But you don't have that problem. You just liquid IV and some grit, and you're going to get right through it.
Exactly. I dragged my sticks out here. We're going to play some golf tomorrow morning. I mean, it's really working out okay. You said it. I mean, the Lord has really smiled on me. But that'll do it for the NFL portion of the podcast. We're going to talk some college football, so make sure you stick around for that. Week 7 in the college football season, John McKechnie. This is as you described it, an amazing slate, and I could not agree more. This is a loaded slate. I would say pretty easily the best week of the year so far in terms of big head-to-head matchups. We had a big week 0, week 1, had a ton of big games, and then a little bit of a lull. But man, college football is back in a big way this week.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been trying to think through when the last time a regular season had a week quite like this. I think that you get a couple of top 10 matchups. I think the Tennessee Alabama game, not necessarily a changing of the guard on the line there, but I think at the same time that there could be some legitimacy proven to this early season hype that the Tennessee has been building. They get that game at home. We don't know what's up with Bryce Young right now. I like Tennessee in that game on the money line even, and definitely to cover. Again, we'll have to see what Bryce Young and his outlook is. I know Jalen Milroe is just kind of a tank that can throw a football. It's kind of ridiculous, but Tennessee's defense has been bad, but they had a bye week to get things straightened out after the Florida game. Then they really shut down an LSU offense that probably isn't really going anywhere either. But I think that builds some confidence, builds a little bit of momentum, doing what they did in Death Valley last week. So if they can just keep a lid on Bama, that this could get Vol Nation, like a group of cicadas that have been molting under the dirt for 17 years. They could be back out in full force, and they could be very, very loud and annoying. But there we are. So really looking forward to that one. Michigan, Penn State, 10 versus 4. That's awesome. To get that one in mid-October. I like Michigan in that one. I think that Michigan could baptize Penn State a little bit. I think that Sean Clifford is who we thought he is, and JJ McCarthy, I think, is an ascending. He could be a legitimately good quarterback, not even just by like Michigan standards. Like I think that he really he might have the goods after all. And Blake Corum is a stud too. I imagine the defense is going to show up, hold Penn State in check. I feel bad for what's happened to Kentucky. They lose the close one at Ole Miss, and then no Levis last week. It ends up in this horrible, inexplicable when they 1,000 years from now, then they uncover the results of the 2022 college football season, they will not understand how South Carolina was able to beat Kentucky. But there we are. But if he's back, Kentucky, Will Levis, is particular, them versus Miss State. I like Kentucky on the money line, although Miss State is, they're really putting a nice season together as well. And then USC, Utah. I like Utah to win this one. I think this is a good time to get back in on them. I know that they just lost to UCLA, but I think that Utah, they tend to just kind of like blow one of these games every year, and then they start finishing strong. So I think it begins here against USC. I don't know your thoughts on those big ranked matchups.
Well, first of all, I could tell you that Tennessee's fans are not going to care if Bryce Young is healthy or not. I think if Bryce Young doesn't end up playing in this game and Alabama loses, there's going to be a lot of like, well, they would have won if they had Bryce Young. I don't think anybody in Knoxville is going to want to hear that.
Trust me, as a Georgia fan who has to hear that Jamison Williams would have single-handedly won Alabama the national championship. Alabama fans, they love nothing more than getting to use an excuse. Nothing more.
I'm trying to like rapidly do some research on this right now. I mean, you would probably know better off the top of your head than me, but this is the biggest game for Tennessee football since blank. I mean, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years.
So we got to college in 2010. Tennessee had like basically already become irrelevant at that point. So yeah. I think we're talking this century. This is the biggest game.
I think pretty easily. Right. I mean, I really can't remember them being in this type of position where it really felt like they had a good chance. I wouldn't go as far as to say like this is a changing of the guard, just given the circumstances with Bryce Young. Even if he does play in this game, he's probably going to be hobbled. I think Alabama's going to have that as kind of an excuse, for lack of a better term, should they lose this game in their back pocket. But again, Tennessee's not going to care. Like, a win's a win as far as you're concerned, and being able to move to 6-0 with that win on your resume would be just massive and potentially set them up for a playoff berth. I mean, Kansas, you brought them up. I'm astounded at the turnaround by Lance Leipold. I mean, the Big 12 is just a complete disaster this year. I mean, it feels like everything has just been
a beautiful disaster, though. Shout out 311.
Excuse me?
I just gave 311 a shout out.
Yeah, that's what I thought I heard in my AirPods. I mean, it just feels like somebody just kind of is picking names out of a hat each week for who's going to be the best team in the Big 12, but it's been really fun. It's made for a lot of theater. Michigan State, Penn State, very much looking forward to that in the Big 10. Like, I'm just kind of trying to get my thoughts together post Wisconsin. It's like, how do I find a way to enjoy the rest of this college football season with how the Badgers have looked? And I don't know if you saw this morning, they dismissed their second highest rated recruit in program history, Logan Brown, the offensive lineman, kicked off the team. So things continue to roll along in Madison.
Oh, he spun it as a hitting the transfer portal. Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I saw as well. I think that was the official terminology. He is in the transfer portal technically, but apparently there was some sort of fight, I guess, at practice, and he just basically got booted off the team.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, I remember, I do still follow recruiting fairly closely. I do remember him being kind of a feather in the cap for one of those later Paul Christ recruiting classes. So yeah, things are not going super well there. Although luckily for you, there's cover in the sense that it's going worse for Michigan State. So
that is true. We could always bank on that. All right, give me like 3 or 4 other games that you're keeping an eye on for betting purposes this weekend, and then we'll get out of here.
Okay, so Oklahoma State, TCU. I do not have a side on this one yet. I don't think I will have that one firmly figured out until 11:59 Eastern time on Saturday. But that one's going to be a lot of fun. But some other bets that I do like for this week. I think my beautiful Maryland Terrapins cover 11 points against Indiana. I think Indiana's bad, and I think that Maryland is pretty decent. So I think that Maryland can win that one by 2 touchdowns. Fresno State, keep an eye on Jake Haener and his status, but I don't think that this Fresno State team is a touchdown worse than San Jose State, so I would take them to cover that. I don't know if I'm quite going money line. We'll see, but as it stands, definitely like plus 6.5 for Fresno State, and sad to do it. I've got some connection to the University of Arizona. My uncle went there, so I
Oh,
wear my Arizona shirt on occasional podcasts and things. But
and it is a very cool shirt. I can attest.
yeah, the old like Mike Bibby desert
Yes.
one. But I'm going to pick on their football team again, and I think that they're going to go up to Washington and get beat pretty soundly. So I would take the West Coast Dogs to go ahead and cover against the Cats.
All right. I love it, my man. We got a fun college football Saturday coming at us. I will be battling, as I feel like I always am, to find a TV or get a stream, or maybe have to bring my iPad to these weddings. Hopefully this is one where they actually have TVs up and I don't have to make a big fuss. But nonetheless, should be a really fun Saturday and an even more fun Sunday. Best of luck to all of you in all of your betting. And you specifically, Jonathan. We'll talk next week.
Thank you.
All right.